So in the last video, which is actually the introductory video, we actually stated that Angular could be used for making all sorts of application, a web application, a mobile application. But what I didn't mention is that Angular can also be used for making a desktop application as well as a progressive web application, which is more like a web application that could run as a native application on your phone and can also run as a native application on your desktop as well. I will be making more videos about progressive web application later on in this channel. So this is the time for you to subscribe to this channel to get notification of my upcoming videos. Now let's go straight to Angular. Before we get started with Angular, we need to install Angular. But in order for us to install Angular, we need an application which is actually called Node. So Angular would run on Node, which is going to be installed on our computer. So for now, let's get started with the installation of Node. So to install Node, we have to go to the Node official website, which is Node.js.org. I'm going to be adding the link to this website in the description of this video. So over here, we have two buttons, and here it was stated that we have Node 16.17.0, and we have the LTS, which simply means the long time support, and we have the 18.8.0, which is the current. So I would actually recommend you always download the one by the left-hand side. So always download the one by the left-hand side because this is actually very, very stable, and you can be rest assured that you're not going to have any issue if you download this particular one. If you're watching this video from the future, this is actually 2022 as at the time of recording this video. This version would have changed, and I'm still going to say that you should still download the one by the left-hand side, irrespective of the number. So with time, this version 18 will move over here, and we're going to have probably version 19 or 20 over here. So by then, I would recommend you download the one by the left-hand side. So that being said, you can just click on this to begin the download process, but I'm not really going to download this at the moment because I already have Node installed on my computer. But the installation process, like I said initially, is pretty straightforward. You just download it, you execute the file, and you just keep agreeing and keep clicking on next over there to get it installed. If you do not agree to the license agreement, then it simply means you won't be able to use Node, so you should just agree and get over the installation point. So I'm going to assume that you have installed Node on your computer now. So in order for us to install Angular, we need to install something called the Angular CLI. So let me Google this. So let me say Angular CLI, and let's see. So that takes us to Angular. You can see the angular.io/CLI. So this here is actually telling us how to install the Angular CLI, which is actually what we would be needing to build an Angular application. So the Angular CLI actually runs on Node. When you install Node, you will definitely have access to this command called npm, which simply means Node Package Manager. So npm is actually used for running different Node command, and one of the command you can run with Node is actually to install. We can basically install anything with Node, not just only Angular. There are so many things that you can install from this website, which is called Node. Let me call it npm.js. So let's say npm, and we would be able to see npmjs.com. So the npm install command can basically be used for installing anything, any package from this website. And if we should search for Angular over here, let's search for Angular, and we'll observe that the Angular is also available. Can you see Angular/CLI? Angular is also available from npm as well, which is basically the same command, almost the same command. So back to this, the -g or -g over here simply means that we want to install Angular globally on our computer. So it's going to be available from any part of our computer. But if we should remove the -g, like they did over here in the npm website, if we should remove the -g, we would be installing Angular only on a specific folder. But that is not what we want to do. I won't advise you to do that. It is actually much more recommended you install Angular globally on your computer. So now we're saying npm, which is the initial command, install and -G means that install all around my computer, install everywhere. So what do we want to install everywhere in our computer? We want to install the Angular CLI. That's basically what we want to install. So we're going to copy this command and move over to our terminal. Then I'm going to paste this command and install Angular globally in my computer. So I've actually done this before. I've installed Angular in my system, so I'm just going to install it again. So I'm going to be sure I have the latest version of Angular, which I think I do. So let's just see how that goes. So the installation of Angular is done at this moment, and now we can start using Angular in our computer. So to check the version of Angular that we are actually using, we can run the command. Now we're going to be running the command ng. So whenever we use the command ng, it simply means we're kind of invoking Angular. So we're going to say, Angular, what's the next command? I want you to tell me your version. So I'm going to type ng version, and when I type ng version, I could see that we have Angular CLI written over here, and Angular CLI now is telling us that it's running. Angular CLI version is in 14.2.1, and this is actually the current version because I just updated my version of Angular again. So this is actually what's running, and our version of Node is actually Node version 16.13.2. So if you actually installed Node, this might be different for you. This might also be different for you because you're probably watching this video from the future and there might be some little improvement over there. So this is just my own version as at this particular time. So Node Package Manager is currently running on version 8.4.0, which is actually this NPM. You don't really need to bother about this because once you install Node, it's going to come alongside with Node Package Manager. So this is just actually my operating system over here. So now we are sure that if you can see the screen, then you rest assured that you have installed Angular globally on your system successfully. So I'm going to close this now, and I'm going to open this folder. So this is where I'm going to be building my new Angular application. So to build my new Angular application, I'm going to right click and I'll open this on my terminal. I'll just find a way of opening wherever you want your projects to be located. So in my case, I want it to be located here. So I'm going to run a new command in order for me to start Angular. So some of this command, I'm going to be pasting them in the description so you don't have to type them, or you can just copy it from the description and just paste it in your terminal. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to say ng, which is the command for invoking Angular. So I'll say ng. So the first time we say ng version, and it actually gave us the version of Angular that we're running. But now when I say ng, I actually want to create a new Angular application. So therefore, I'm going to say new. And this is telling Angular that, get ready, I'm about to create a new application. So I'll say ng new, then I'm going to give the application a name. So this name must be together, or they could also have an hyphen, but they must not be like, you can't actually leave a space between the name. So let's say I want to call my application sample Angular, and I think that's just the name that could come to my head as of this point in time. So I'm going to say sample, then I will go Angular. So Angular allows you to use camel casing, so you can actually write this like this. You can actually write it like this as well, sample hyphen Angular. So if I should write mine in camel casing, Angular is definitely going to convert it to look something like this. So, but I'm actually fond of writing mine this way, which is sample Angular. So when I do this and I press enter, Angular will start creating its projects for us, but it's going to ask us some certain questions based on how we want to set up our project. So the first question Angular is asking us at this moment is, would we like to use Angular routing? And you might be wondering, what exactly is Angular routing? I'll just show you that in a minute. So when we talk about Angular routing, remember when in the previous video, I actually said that when we are moving from this place to this place, when we're moving between pages in Angular, this part is actually not rolling right, but we are actually navigating from page to page. So this is actually made possible because of Angular routing. You understand now? So if we are going to be building an application that we need to have more pages attached to it, then of course we need Angular routing. But if you're making a basic application that is just going to be one single view, then in that case, we don't need Angular routing. So Angular is asking us, do we need Angular routing? And to me, yes, I need Angular routing in this. So I would say Y, which is for yes, and the N over there is actually for no. So I will say the Y, and that's for yes. So the next question here is Angular asking us what type of style sheet that we want to use in this. So if you're familiar with CSS, you would know that we have CSS and we also have the CSS preprocessors, which are the SCSS, the SAS, which technically mean the same thing, just syntax difference. That's by the ways. And we also have the less as well. And in this case, normally I really prefer using the SCSS, but because this tutorial, like I said before, is not all about CSS, it's not all about making things to look beautiful. It's all about understanding how Angular works. So there's actually going to be no need for me to use SCSS in this case. But just in case you want to use SCSS or any of this CSS preprocessor, you can use your up and down arrow keys on your keyboard to select the one that you want. So in this case, I'm just going to be using CSS and I would press enter. And now that I've done that, Angular will go ahead to start installing awesomeness into our application. Yes, I have to say awesomeness because Angular is actually awesome. So when this installation process is done, I'm going to get back to you. So the installation process is actually complete, and over here we can see that we have a whole lot of stuff going on here. But I just want to show you what you should actually basically look out for. So here you can see that we have packages installed successfully. And when we come over here, we can see that successfully initialized Git. So Git is actually a versioning system that is basically used by developers. And I'm very well that most of us, we already know what Git is. But if we don't know what Git is, then we can talk about that later on. But Angular actually initializes Git for us by default, and that's why it's saying that successfully initialize Git. So when we see these, you can see nothing to be done. It means that we are done with our whole installation. So over here, we can see that we have this whole folders here, and at this point, I can open this on my IDE. In my IDE, so I'm just going to open this particular folder in my IDE. So in this case, I am actually using WebStorm, but you can actually use any IDE of your choice to do this. Like you can use VS Code, which is actually a great code editor as well, and you can use anything you're actually comfortable with. So I'm just going to close all this pop-up coming out here, and you can see the README. This is a sample README, and this README is basically coming from this particular readme.md file over here. So we don't really need this much, so I'm just going to close this up. So I must say this. There is this perception that Angular is difficult to learn, that it's one of the most difficult front-end framework to learn, or one of the most difficult JavaScript framework to learn. Well, so I think people actually say this because truly there are a lot to learn Angular. Like we're just starting this project and we already have all these files over here. And you probably will be wondering what exactly are all this. So I'm just going to say that this can truly make it to look like it's difficult to learn, but in all honesty, I think Angular is easy, and I'm here to make Angular easy for you. Now, I'm going to be taking the easy way to learn this, and because if I'm going to be taking the easy way, at this point, I would say do not pay attention to most of these files that you will see in here, because with time, we're going to learn what those files are and how they can be used. But I'm going to be showing you the things you should actually pay attention to, and I'm going to be explaining what those particular files are doing. So, first off, the first file I think you should know about is, or the first folder I think you should know about, because you would definitely be curious about that one, is actually the Node module. So if you're new to front-end development, then you might be wondering what exactly is the Node module. So do you remember that we installed Node? Let me go back to the browser. Do you remember that we installed Node? And we actually installed Angular. We used an npm to install Angular. And I actually say that anything concerning npm is actually getting from this npm repository. So why Angular is actually being installed, Angular installed a whole lot of things alongside with it. Now all those things that Angular installed, they are all located in the node module over here. And when we actually expand this, we can see a whole lot of things here. Now this is what I'm going to tell you. Do not bother about this folder. Angular would handle this folder for you. You don't have to change anything in that folder. Angular just needs that folder to do its work. You understand? So in most cases, even by most developed, by most advanced developer, they don't actually make use of this folder to do anything, except when they're just being curious about one or two things, and that's when you see them actually moving into the node module. But you actually don't need that for anything. So just leave the node module folder there. Don't delete it, just leave it there. Now, the next thing I'm going to say here is the .vs code. So this is just more like a setup kit for those of us using, using VS Code actually. So this is actually going to make VS Code to recognize Angular in some certain ways. It's actually not something you need, and you can actually delete that if you're not using VS Code. Like in my case, I'm not using VS Code, so I can just go ahead to delete that, but I'm just going to leave it here as well. So why these other files here, I'm going to say that you should not bother about these files for now, at least. You should not bother about these files. But I'm going to be talking about the package.json. So you can see that Angular has actually installed a whole lot of things and they place them in the node folder, in the node module folder. But those things that Angular installed, what exactly are they? We can actually find those things over here. You can see dependencies. So dependencies is like dependent. So Angular is actually dependent on these modules. We have what we call the Angular animation, Angular common, Angular compiler, Angular core, Angular forms, Angular platform, platform browser, blah, blah, blah. And we also have what it's dependent on while we're having our development. So these are the development dependencies. So if you don't understand what these dependencies are, that is fine. That is 100% fine. You don't have to bother about this so much because Angular can also handle this for you, and you will get to understand what the package.json, actually is doing for us as time goes on as well. So now there's something that you should be bothered about. What you should be bothered about is actually things within the source folder, or at least most of the things within the source folder. So first off, you need to be bothered about this folder and about this folder. And as time goes on, about the environment folder. We're going to talk about that later on in this course. So here we have our index.html, which is actually, if you're familiar with JavaScript, then you should know this file. This file is just a simple JavaScript file, and this is actually where everything starts from. And we can see our app.root. So this app.root is just the part. Remember I said that when we're building a single page application in our first video, I said that it is just one single page that we have, and every manipulation is being done within that one single page, meaning that when we click on the feature, the manipulation is being done just within one page. Now, that one page that I was referring to is actually this page, the index.html page. Now, every single manipulation is going to be done within this app-root tag that we have here. So this is where most of the manipulation is going to be done. So Angular would be the one to do this manipulation for us. It's not like we are going to put in the manipulation like inside of this place to write a whole lot of things. No, that's not what I meant. Angular is going to do all this manipulation for us. So because of Angular will do this for us, we also don't need to bother about this particular index.html file. So we can close this and we can also close this. Now, what should we bother about? We should bother about our asset folder. Now, our assets folder is basically used for keeping our assets. And when we talk about assets and web development, we're talking about the things that are used for developing the website. For instance, in the case of the Angular official documentation, this image or icon you're seeing over here, it is an asset. This image and icon is an asset. The Angular logo is also an asset because those things are images. So we need to put the images and or the images, the video, the audio, or any other thing you need to add to your website. You're going to put there in the assets folder, and that is the place where Angular will be able to access it from. So that is basically what we use the assets folder for. So that's been said. The app folder is actually where everything happens. Like the name implies, app. We're actually building a web application and we have the app folder. So it just makes sense. Everything would happen within the app folder. So let's open the app folder to see what is in there. So when we open the app folder, we can see there's 6 files here. We have the app component.css, and I wanted to take a note of the naming convention because that's one thing about Angular. Angular just keeps things very neat. They follow a specific naming convention as well. So you can see we have app over here. And here we have component. So this is actually like a convention for Angular for naming their stuff. You can see here we have module and this is not component. So that automatically tells us that this particular one and this particular one, they're actually different from these other ones actually. So let's just take a look at each of them and see what they are. So let's take a look at the CSS first because that's actually the first on the list. So the CSS is actually an empty sheet and this is basically where we're going to write our CSS code. So we're just going to write any CSS code we want to write is going to be written over here. And your guess is as good as mine. The HTML, this is where we're going to write all our HTML code as well. So when I open this particular one here, you can see that we already have some kind of HTML code in here. You can see the HTML code, and we also have some CSS code here within the style tag. So this is actually how the default something works. The default, Angular actually created a kind of a default site for us, which I'm going to be showing you very soon in this video. So this is actually how the default site was created. But in reality, you definitely don't want to be putting your styles within the HTML file itself. So you definitely don't want to be doing this. And this is just the whole HTML code that Angular have written for us. We're not going to be needing any of this, so we're going to be deleting all of them later on in this video. So the next thing I want to tell us now is this file over here. So this is one file that you don't need to worry yourself about for now. You don't need to worry yourself about it. However, I'm going to tell you what it is. It's actually a file that is used for making unit testing in Angular. So if you want to test this particular component, by the way, this is actually called the components. Like you can see components. I'm going to be talking more about components in the next video. So this is actually used for testing this particular component over here. And we don't have to bother about this for now because this is a little bit advanced, and talking about this will just get you confused. So let's leave this for now. So we're going to close this here and we're going to open the next one, which is our app component.ts. So our app component.ts is where the whole magic happens. This is actually what brings everything together. And when we're talking about our components, we would be talking more about this particular app component.ts, and that's going to be in the next video. So we'll also be talking about the module and the routing in subsequent videos as well. So for now, let's just move forward. But before we move forward, I would like to tell us how can we see exactly what we have done. Like I said, Angular actually created a kind of a dummy website for us, which we won't be using, but let's just see what Angular created for us, right? So to do that, I'm going to open my integrated terminal and I'm going to serve the Angular application. Serving the Angular application simply means we're starting it. We want to run the Angular application. And we need a command to run the Angular application. So can you guess what a command would be? So remember, when we want to check the Angular version, we make use of ng. And when we want to start a new Angular project, we make use of ng. So if we want to serve the Angular application, what would the command be? Remember, for a new Angular application, we make use of ng, then we say new. So to serve the Angular application, we would say ng, and then we are going to say serve, which is actually the long form of writing this. We can actually just say ngs as the short form, but I'm going to be using the long form, which is ngserve. So if I should press enter in this case, our application would be served. Now, at this point in time, Angular is asking our permission to get some data from us for them to be able to use to improve the Angular experience. So because of this particular project is actually to educate people, so I'm going to be saying yes to this. So you can say no to this if you don't want this to happen. You can say yes to this as well. So in my own case, I'm saying yes to this. And Angular says that I can disable this at any point in time by running the ng analytics disable command, and this particular feature will be disabled. Now you can see that Angular is actually running. It's actually building up the application for the very first time, and it is now done, and it's telling us that compilation is completed. So that's compiled successfully. And now Angular is telling us that our website is available on localhost and port 4200, which is basically the default port for Angular. So I'm going to press Control and click on this link here, and for me to open this on my browser, and let's see what Angular has for us. So this is the default website that Angular created for us over here. So we can just see the name of our application here, which is Sample Angular. So it says the Sample Angular app is running. So if you can see this page, if you're following along with this tutorial, like you're coding along with this code tutorial, and you can see this page, I just want to say congratulations. You've successfully installed Node, you've installed Angular, and you have started a new Angular project, and you've even served it successfully. But if you can't see this page, then you probably would want to go back to the video to check exactly what you're probably missing. And if you think you're not missing anything, you can actually just ask a question in the comments below. And I also encourage you, because one of the ways of learning is by answering questions. So if you see any question in the comment box, you can, and that you know the answer to, you can just go ahead and reply that particular question. However, I'm going to do my very best to answer every question in the comment box over here. So that is just it, and let's see. Here, let's just see what we have on this website. So we have Sample Angular app is running, and we have the resources. These are different links that could be helpful to you. So if you want to learn Angular, you can take a look at this place here. So if you want to learn Angular, you can go to the Angular official website to learn Angular. And remember, we talked about the Angular CLI already. So that's Angular/CLI. This is Angular Material, which is a component framework for Angular. But we'll be talking more about that probably in another series, actually. And here is the Angular blog, just a whole lot of different Angular related stuff over here. So this one here is just the different commands that we need, and we're going to be talking about all this command as time goes on. So this is it, and we've successfully installed our first Angular application, and that will be it for this video. If you are yet to subscribe to this channel, what are you waiting for? Click the subscribe button below, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.